Now we must plan.
If we had only known sooner, either.
Don't keep it a secret.
I am on my way to Mike and Sue's house right now. They wanted to talk to me again. It was their idea. I gave them some options for things we could talk about, and the one they chose was things they wish they had known before they had to learn them the hard way. So I'm excited to see what they have to say. My walk to Mike and Sue's house is about 4 houses away, and it is on this gorgeous street. You can see the river in the background. Let me show you my scenic route.
I would say begin cleaning out, death cleaning, elder purging, whatever you want to call it, way sooner than you think you need to. and don't wait, because many people wait for a crisis. Hurry up and get started. Think about what it will be like when you are not comfortable or safe in your home, or when you just don't need the space of your home, when your needs change and you need something different. Also, we've recently begun, I'll call it funeral planning. It's really green burial planning, without ceremonial gatherings. But I was thinking, when you're preparing to leave your long-term home, you don't have a definitive reason. Like, we know we're all going to die, so we do our funeral planning ahead of time and save our children that work, right? Well, can we sit here and say at 69 years old, gee, there's going to come a day when I can't live here? That it's not that black and white. So you have to make those decisions ahead of time. Like, Mike's folks got so sick so fast.
But they downsized. They had already downsized to a much smaller house.
In their 70s.
So, you know.
Yeah, early, I'd say, early to mid-70s.
But a lot, it was influenced by them wanting to relocate, not necessarily to call it downsizing, but they lived in a lot of different states, and they were living in New Jersey in a townhouse, so it wasn't all that much space to begin with. But New Jersey had a lot of taxes, so they moved to Maryland, so the taxes would be less.
The real reason they moved to Maryland is their daughter had a child in her 40s.
Oh, the princess, yes.
Yes, the princess had a child. Okay, what else? So, oh yeah, I was talking about planning, and how there is no definitive black and white when you should consider other living arrangements as you age. You know, do you wait for the crisis, the medical crisis, to occur? Well, if you do that, then your spouse and or the rest of your family is going to take the burden of that. So trying to consider, there are so many choices though, you know, there's so many things to consider.
Yeah, and you know, in thinking about, do we want to relocate? We love our house and we don't want to leave it. And kind of thinking about, well, how could this house work if we were less mobile? And okay, we could live on one floor of this house. We have a bathroom on this floor. We have a bedroom on this floor. But it's not officially set up that way.
And then there's still the stairs to get into the house.
I understand.
You know,
that.
getting in and out of the house itself is difficult. I'm not sure why people are so afraid of stairs, but I use a railing.
Yeah, and as you recall, my dad had significant dementia, but he could do stairs.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, you want to watch when you say, okay, Dad. Because when he hears the word okay, down the stairs he goes, whether he's being spotted or not.
We used to go out to
And he took a tumble one time.
a bad tumble.
It was really
A
scary.
head over heels, and it was my fault because we
What did
used-
you say? Okay, Dad?
Well, I kind of said it to myself. We used to go out to feed the ducks every day, and I'd get the bucket of corn down the stairs, and then I'd come for him, and I used to have him wait for me, and then I'd say, okay, Dad, let's go. And I'd go down facing him in front of him to help keep him steady, because he wasn't always sure where to put his feet. And this one day, I kind of just said to myself under my breath, like, okay, now. And off he went before I got there, and wouldn't you know, he took a header. And that was like a final straw. I'm like, I can't be responsible. I'm done.
Yeah, that is probably when we started
It was.
looking for the nursing home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although, it still wasn't an instant decision.
I was familiar, through my work, I was familiar with, because I was a visiting hospice nurse. A lot of people who live in nursing homes and assisted living facilities will receive hospice care there because it's their home, and that's where they receive the care. So as a visiting nurse, I had visited many of the homes in the area and was familiar with them and knew very clearly which ones I might consider for loved ones and which ones I would not. So that was to our advantage. And Mom and Dad had some money. So we were able to have Dad move to a home where he had to pay, at the time, $200 a day, which seemed like a lot. But he could do that, and they took a look at him, read his medical records, and said, yeah, he's got enough money to stay here. He's not going to outlive his money, And it was a good choice for him. He probably didn't last as long as we expected him to, but it was a good place for him, and one that I was able to get to almost daily. Dad was at the Peabody home in Franklin, which at that time was a very small, family-like home.
They've expanded, so
Yeah.
they did.
So we don't know what they're like now,
Yeah.
but they've very much changed their environment. Yeah. So I wish there was like a line that you crossed at a certain age or physical ability where you said, now we must plan for our next living adventure, because it's so different for everybody.
And we have a neighbor up the road who's 90 years old and is walking the neighborhood sprightly, very actively.
Yes.
Sue couldn't keep up with her. So.
Yeah, living alone. Yeah. Yeah. When your
You don't
son
know
met
when that
her,
line
he
is.
was like, I said afterwards, she was a dancer. She was dancing all over the road, he says. Because when she talks, she's very physically able and lives alone. And her family is attentive. They visit quite often, even though they're out of state. So, it's different for everybody. You have people our age that are not able to self-care. So I guess that's the biggest reason is self-care. Although I'll tell you that if he wasn't here, I couldn't keep this house up by myself. I can't split wood. Well, now we have a new wood splitter. I could. But even when I was 40, I couldn't split wood. Well, if I took 10 whacks at a log, I might get it, but anyway, so.
Well, you don't have to heat with wood. You can just turn up the oil burner.
I suppose.
Well, yeah, that's certainly, we told you the story of my folks, that Mom was sick and Dad had dementia, and they didn't tell us until it was painfully obvious. My parents would behave as best as they could when we were there, and they didn't let on. So, so I guess you could say the moral of the story: to let on all your tell your kids all your problems. No, you're not going to do that either.
Don't keep it a secret
Yeah, but I
if
mean,
you're struggling.
I certainly feel like sharing knowledge. If I see my son has a particular problem, let me share what I know about that problem. I've had that problem before. And Matt just had to buy a new car. And it's like, I offered some advice on brands and what to do about his broken car. Like, he was driving around with the check engine light on. And he borrowed our car for a trip, and he left his car here. And I can't have that orange check engine light glowing in my face. So I put a piece of tape over it. So
Electrical tape.
yeah, and
You
when he
fixed
got
it.
back, I said, Matt, I fixed your car. It's like staring at that light all the time. It's just going to make you crazy, you know.
I'd like to build a little house over there in the sunshine.
We do have a separate building lot over there, but also we've done enough construction projects to know it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And
Buy like a tiny home.
Yeah, I'm thinking, there's a modular home builder in Tilton. We've driven by them and I've thought, oh, we don't need a house that's going to last 200 years. If we build a little 3-room house, we don't need one like this that was built to last forever.
And now we got to figure out what is that line in the sand where we have to build that extra home
Right.
before we're too old to organize that.
And what is there to tell us that will fill our needs at the time
Well,
that it's done?
you know your basic needs of elderly housing. You usually want single floor living.
Mobility, right?
You know,
Safety, mobility, convenience, ease, all those things. But what about care? If we get the house all done, we move in, and then we fall apart, or one of us falls apart, I used to
you're
work.
volunteering to be the first to fall
Yeah,
apart.
I'll
Yeah.
fall apart first.
Yeah, good.
I was a wellness coordinator for an assisted living facility. At the time, it was a new facility, and so I was admitting residents. So I had to test the residents. I had to meet with them in their old home and test them, make sure they were appropriate in their physical and mental and health. Make sure all those things were appropriate to assisted living. And what I saw time and time again, and I'm not good with statistics, but it might have been 9 out of 10 times, when people leave their home and they move in old age, it's not well tolerated. If they weren't falling apart before that move, they fell apart when the move occurred. It happened so much that I began to tell families ahead of time, this is what I have seen, this is what might happen. Let's be prepared for that, because it happened so often. And I think a lot of it was the trauma. You're having people leave long-time homes, where they can walk to the bathroom with their eyes closed, and changing everything about that living environment. Their choices, their choices are severely limited. They have other people making decisions for them, and it just blows people out of the water. It's hard.
Watching your video on the 55 plus community where the big house was, the take on that is when you guess when you're ready to move, is like do you have enough foresight to look down the road is, as I fail, am I going to need this benefit, that benefit, this benefit?
Right. And that comes back to not quite the elephant in the room thing, but being able to say those words, as I fail.
Yeah.
I'm going to die. I better plan for my funeral.
And, this is something learned from my folks and your folks too, had some plans about dying, and your folks, and both of our parents had plans what to do with my body.
Right.
We want to be buried here. Okay, and it turns out my folks pre-planning, as I pointed out as we were at this meeting today to the group that were sitting at my table. Well, my folks had their pre-planning funeral benefits, and then we got the bill. So their pre-planning didn't account for, inflation, by the way. Yeah, they prepaid, but
A long time.
You-
It had
you
been
owe-
so
you owe
many
more.
years that they didn't cover, that funeral home did not cover for inflation. You would think that's part of,
Yeah, I
one of the
think- I feel
reasons
like-
you pre-plan,
Right.
is to cover the cost.
we got scammed. I don't know. We got the itemized bill at the end. Here's what they paid up front, and here's what extras we're going to charge you now that they're gone.
You got to wonder what the fine print is. The guy we talked to today says, you pay for it now, it's done. You've paid for it.
Oh yeah. So
But,
I'm suspicious about
What's
that.
the fine print on that, right?
Our estate plan didn't include, and the lawyers talked about, so do you want to include, your funeral arrangements? And they're like, nah. But now it was the seed was planted. Oh yeah, we're probably going to do this too.
But we also thought that, and perhaps this wasn't correct, but it was our thought at the time, that we didn't want to put restrictions on what Matt should do with our bodies. Whatever seems right and is convenient for him.
So yeah, now we're thinking about, I like saying it, what's to do with my corpse, And we had a bad experience with Brian dying because we had no plans. This was certainly not something we expected.
For a 22-year-old, you wouldn't.
And, his body got moved around for several different places before we said, okay, cremation, But these all were decisions made when we were in a fog. You're not clearly thinking about
Oh
what
my
what are
God,
you
you're
gonna
hardly thinking at all.
We had a very good friend who
Took us by the hand.
took us by the hand and helped. But, you can look back on it and say, I don't know how we made those decisions and
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But the guy today that we met with says, one of the things you're doing by pre-planning is you're preventing that loved one who is left from having to make these decisions on the worst day of their life. He used that term. And that's what it was like for us with Brian. It's like, our brains weren't working. We couldn't make decisions, Yeah, we could hardly breathe. So that's why we're going to pre-plan.
if we get it done in time, because,
Right.
could go any minute now.
Don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't know that there's a lot that we could say if we had only known sooner. Life comes at you. It doesn't matter what age you are. Life comes at you. You don't solve your problems until you have those problems.
It's very wise.
Who knows what problems you're going to have. And when you think you've planned for a problem, there'll be something else, something you didn't think of. So,
My advice would be start soon. Start now.
I love talking to Mike and Sue. It makes my day. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. They are just so funny and full of wisdom and stories. I learn a lot every time. I would also love to listen to you and your stories. and your wisdom and learn from you and be able to share your stories. So if you have anything you want to talk about, whether it's lessons you've learned the hard way or experiences you've had with your parents or your own experience in retirement or planning for retirement, anything you want to talk about, I would love to listen. I would love to record you, and I would love to share it. So please reach out. My number is 603-573-6969. I'll see you next time.
I'm glad you got the car that works anyway.
Are you going to get another one? Edit
Folks.
this out. No, I'm kidding. And I
Not.
said, you know what? I don't want to drive. She can't do any
She'll
work.
tell you she's too small.